As business owners, we have the weight of the world on our shoulders, so we need a place to learn from others that have been there, a place to work on our business, but also a place to work on our personal lives. The Greatness Garage is that place. I'm Brad Borkus, and I'm here to guide you on your journey. Now let's get to work. Welcome everyone back to the Greatness Garage podcast. We are so excited to have you. I am blessed today with Dr. Brian Underhill. You have been in this coaching field for a long time. You have a ton of experience, and his bio is epic. And he has spoken on 6 of the 7 continents. So I guess we got to find a way to get that Antarctic, trip. I'm hoping that's the one we're missing, right? Yes. He wrote a book back in 2007 called, let me read it, Executive Coaching for Results, the Definitive Guide to Developing Organizational Leaders. He just did another amazing book in 2019 called Mastering Executive Coaching. And Brian is the founder and CEO of Coach Source, and he has, I think he's like 11,000 executive coaches across the globe working with you. Is that correct?
1,100, actually.
1,100. Oh,
1,100, yes.
Amazing. Still epic, yeah.
And they're all on all continents too, but not Antarctica. So we'll work on it.
We're working on that one. So, Brian, thank you so much for coming on the podcast, and really, what an amazing topic. When you said it a couple weeks ago when we started talking about the strategy here, little did we know that this much crisis would be thrown on top of what we are already facing. And it is so presently important to be discussing this. So first, tell us a little bit about how Coach Source serves in the world.
Well, executive coaching is a growing field, as many may be quite aware. So basically a one-to-one relationship with a leader, and usually an external coach, although that can take many forms, to help that leader grow and develop, most commonly in areas of leadership. So if you've ever taken a 360 feedback survey, many of the items on a survey like that would be some of the items that a coach could help a leader improve in. And in so doing, research has found that leaders generally make a lot more progress through something like coaching than they might if they just went to a leadership class or went to a 2-day, even week-long class on leadership.
Seminar, yep.
A seminar of some kind. They may forget a certain amount of that, and it may not be as relevant to their day-to-day work. But in coaching, that can be reinforced and brought back in the workplace in context. And so over, say, a 6-month period of time, a leader could make some great improvements and have it reinforced over time. So we're sort of humanizing the workforce, if you will, making for better leaders.
Absolutely. Isn't that the truth? And that's it's funny how but amazing actually how that shift has happened, where the empathy was, like a what? You go back 20, 30, 40 years ago, and it's like, and now, emotional intelligence and empathy and understanding how to really connect to people. One of the things that I mentioned in kind of, I looked on your LinkedIn bio and stuff like that, is that you were one of the pioneers of many surveys. And, I love the 360 survey, right? Because it gives them that global perspective. Explain to me how you kind of pioneered mini surveys.
Well, in coaching, you can actually do a really short survey in the middle or at the end of a coaching assignment to see if the leader got it better. And the survey, all it does is it asks everyone around the leader. So if you're a leader, we would ask your boss and your direct reports and a couple of peers, whether or not they've seen you improve in your leadership skill since we started coaching. And that's what we call a mini survey. And in organizations with many leaders, you could do lots of these surveys and aggregate the results. But it's a nice way to put some numbers onto behavioral change that you might be trying to make, particularly for some, say, an engineer client. The soft skill stuff, sometimes doesn't totally make sense. So we got them practicing new behaviors. We then run the survey and ask everyone around him or her if they've noticed some change. Most of the time they say, yes, we've seen some positive improvement. And then your engineer client loves it because now we have numbers. We can make graphs if we want of proving that there was a change made.
Isn't it funny though, too? Organizations love statistical numbers, right? Because it's something that they can kind of wrestle with and dial in on, direct in on, versus that kind of unhappy, or and it's that kind of very difficult. It's funny, you talk about that in my previous business that I owned. One of the things we created, we were talking about raising what we called the happiness quotient. And we were trying to define, like, how are we going to define happiness? And we went around and around and around, and we finally came back to, I guess everybody defines their own happiness. So let's let them grade themselves. And then we will continue to monitor that and grade themselves against themselves. But it was so much that we had to kind of go back, not just, are they seeming happy, but we wanted that numerical touchback. So yeah, I can see that. That's very cool.
Absolutely. Yeah. Organizations want that number a lot of times.
Yep.
Especially for soft stuff. Like, how do you measure it? And what we're spending all this money on coaching. How do we know we're getting something for it? And that's what a survey will do.
Amen. Right. And you're looking at that too, where those of us who are proctoring the coaching, and we see the person, you see walls break down, you see people lighten up, you see people, their hearts open, you see their minds open, you see understanding raised, like even just in the call sometimes. But that's tough to communicate that across an organization of what the impact will be. And the numerical makes some sense there. Yep. So
Right.
Very cool. So today our conversation and our main part of our topic is leadership through crisis. And, I have a couple clients who are very empathetic, and this last week and weekend, I can see them just, their faces are just bearing the weight of all this sadness and heartbreak that's going throughout the world, and trying to make sense of it. What are you experiencing on your end with your clients, with your people, with your coaches? What is showing up on your end?
Well, and of course, here as we're filming this, we're now several days into some major civil disobedience in our country, and rightfully so in many ways, depending on how you look at it, for what's happened, the injustice that's happened. And I haven't had lots of dialogue yet, since it's now only Monday, with our community about these last few days. We've certainly been talking about the prior major current still crisis, the COVID crisis, and we've been having lots of dialogue about that, because we're 2.5 months into everything changing in the world without us knowing what it might look like on the other side. And regardless, coaching is a profession that's well suited to help individuals and leaders, in our case as executive coaches, to contend with crisis. And leaders, these are the times when leaders have to step up. No matter where you are in your organization, people are looking to leaders and leadership to guide them, and to guide whatever it is they're intending to do, if it's an organization, if it's a government or whatnot. And so this is kind of the time for leaders to shine, or not. And
what? That's a great point. That or not.
Or not. Yes. Right.
Yep. Yeah. I've seen that. You've seen that a lot of times where through their own insecurities, their own frustrations, their own whatever their story is, right? The or not shows up uniquely. And so sometimes it's easier to see what is by peeling away what the or not is. And what are some examples that you've seen of, let's call it poor leadership or misguided leadership, where that kind of has shown the or not? Do you have any examples that you've seen that have kind of created the or not, that you've had to kind of coach out of, or redirect or reframe the way in which they were looking at them?
I think people, they're looking for their leaders to guide them, and they want leaders who get it, who understand, who empathize. And there are famous stories in leadership history. I was in Australia a few months ago, and people were criticizing their prime minister. You remember they had these awful fires.
Oh, yes.
And initially, apparently, he had a laissez-faire attitude towards it. And I believe he was on a vacation that he didn't interrupt while this was taking place. And so people were really furious with him and feeling like he was just really out of touch. Another famous example from the Deepwater Horizon oil spill with BP, British Petroleum, and their CEO was famously had said something like, "I just want to get my regular life back," or something like that.
Yep.
And absolutely infuriated everybody. And that shows being out of touch and not empathetic and not really in it with people, caring for what it is that they're dealing with. And I think that's a major part of what a leader needs to do, to really feel what everyone is feeling in their organization.
Well, and you said it too, you said in it with them, right? I think that's what so many of them, they want us as leaders to feel is that we are in it with them, right?
Right.
And that's, and that, I think that portion of it, trying to connect to what they're feeling. It's funny when somebody, doesn't look at the people first and say, hey, reading them, what are they feeling? What are they, I think sometimes our fears tell us that in crisis, we need to just be hard and drive hard through and break through that next wall and break through that thing when a lot of times, especially, I've seen in the last several years, is that it needs a softer listening, the wisdom that says you have 2 ears, 1 mouth, use accordingly. It does that. And how do you coach, let's say, because I think a lot of systems train that power through and destroy type of perspective. How do you coach coaches or executives that have gone through that? How do you coach them to open up that other side, let's say, like develop that other side of empathy and stuff like that?
Well, coaching almost always will start with some form of assessment to learn what the leader's good at and where they can improve. And that could be a written scored assessment, or it could be interviews. So usually the leader will have been outfitted with information about some of these strengths and weaknesses. And in some cases, of course, maybe their strength is they're a driver, they're an incredible operator, they get things done. And then the weakness is leaves dead bodies behind. Doesn't treat people with respect, doesn't suffer fools, things like this. So with that information, we could help the leader to improve that side of them, assuming they want to improve. That's the biggest piece here. Assuming they want to improve, we can help them to work to improve that side. And a lot of what the leader might do, sometimes it's just simple, obvious things, honestly. It could be as simple as just improving their listening skills, asking more questions, seek first to understand before being understood, gathering more inputs on certain things, or delegating on things that are maybe less critical and not have to run every single thing their way, let other people have some wins. I think there's a whole list, of course, millions of books probably written on this, but it's a natural tendency for many leaders to just go straight to the task, the driving part of it, and kind of overlook the relationship side. And you really need that proper balance between the task side and the relationship side in order to be an effective leader.
Well, you're saying that too. And a lot of the reason I would, propose that would probably be is that so many, as we just talked about, so many organizations are looking for the numerical result, and the task is typically maybe not overall more effective, but it is faster to the result than the relationship, which long-term might be much better, but it's going to take a lot more development to do that. Is that what you see, or what do you see happen from that?
Oh, certainly. Adding that relationship side takes longer. But generally, if you've got both hitting on nice cylinders there, you'll get a lot farther. Than if you're
down the tracks,
than if you're just doubling on only one of those two. You really need both. And remember that much of our economy today is service-based economy, is a lot of, what's the term? Thinking workers, I guess. That's the best term.
Yes.
But, knowledge workers. That's what Peter Drucker had called what many of us do today. So fewer of us may be doing a physical piece of labor that requires us to do the same thing over and over again. But instead, we're bringing more and more of our brains into the work that we do. And so to maximize on that, you really do need more of a proper balance between getting the job done, but also that relationship side and building that relationship so that you get more of what I've heard called someone's discretionary energy
Oh, yes.
is
All right.
offered to the task that you're trying to get accomplished.
Yep. Get that passion, that buy-in. Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
So when you look at as leadership through crisis, what as we're speaking to the audience and them kind of sitting here listening, what is something that you've seen is an area that is the most common, maybe that needs to be thought of, considered, or worked on as they're coming into crisis, that you see is kind of the people stumble a little bit, that maybe people can go, oh, I'm struggling with that, and then what have you seen them do with it?
Yeah. Well, from my own story, I learned, so in early March, excuse me, I was traveling and doing some pretty big trips as this was all really coming to the foreground. And then, of course, around here by March 16, 17, everything just completely came apart. I wasn't overly worried myself. I wasn't overly anxious. But within a few days, I started to get word from some of my people that our employees were feeling quite anxious. And I started to get urged to start to communicate more, because at that moment, I hadn't really said much to the whole company. People were wanting to see me and talk to me more. And we have about 30 employees at Coach Source, and then we have these 1,100 contractors. But particularly with our 30 employees, I sensed that they needed to interact with me and see me. And so I pretty quickly came up with we were calling it a virtual water cooler concept, Zoom, of course. And we're a company that's always virtual. So we don't get together a ton, and there's a few people I've never physically met yet. But we got everyone together on the cameras and told everyone, bring a favorite drink and tell us what you have, and put on a fun background, and we'll do a vote on the best background. And there wasn't much of agenda, except I did give some updates on what's happening to the business. And then we just checked in with each other.
Yep.
And people really love that. And then we kept it going. But communication, absolutely key. And to go along with that, honestly, is honesty. Just to be realistic about where things are at, because you can't promise a whole lot right now. You can't necessarily say, absolutely guarantee there will be no staff reduction. It's hard to guarantee that. You don't know, when are we going to open again if we're a business that's closed right now? You often don't know that. So you have to just be honest about what you do know, and be honest about what you don't know. And just communicate that. I liken it to, if you're maybe a bit of a nervous flyer, if you're thinking the flight's going to be nerve-wracking or whatever, whenever the pilot comes on, you feel better, right?
Yeah.
Or you look at the flight attendants and they don't look nervous, so you're not nervous. But if you don't hear from them or see anyone or whatever, people start to spin stories, and so they need to see their leaders, in that case, the pilot, the flight attendant, or in our case, myself, and just know, okay, they're there, they're in charge. They don't seem to be panicking. I can calm down now, do my job.
Yeah. And you said, as I wrote a couple notes here down, is create connection, humanity, and all of what you were saying there, that really just shows them, what it is they're going through. So let me ask you this: how does a leader balance the need to give honest information, while do they withhold certain information that is unknown but could really shake the confidence of the employees? How do you balance between that, and what do you think is part of that process that we should go through?
There's never an easy answer to that. If it's unknown and not decided yet, I don't know if there's a lot of value in speculating, because it's unknown. So my management team, we had a topic just the other day. We were about to go down a rabbit hole for an hour on some piece of what if this happens. And then one of us stopped and said, we don't know if this is going to happen, and it may not happen. Actually, we'll know more next week, because it's something that had a date associated with it. So let's just talk about it next week.
Isn't that the truth? When you're doing that what if, because there's value for it, but having the conversation for the sake of the conversation isn't necessarily valuable, is it? It just causes us worry, or it causes us mental energy that we were talking about investing is invested in something that just really is so far out there. Just let's wait. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Exactly. So that's where I would say then there may be no point. I mean, now someone may ask and you could talk about, we don't know, or that's what you say, we still don't know. We're watching it. We're going to talk about it as a team. And as soon as I know something, I'm going to share it with you. So that may be the best way to handle it.
That's a great one.
Until you do know.
Yeah. So one thing, when we're talking about crisis, I think one thing that's really kind of an interesting perspective to look at is external crisis versus internal crisis. This COVID and all the stuff that's happening, I hate to say it, but one of the benefits is there is a bit of a galvanization of us against COVID, against, like that we're together, we will survive type of thing. What about when it's internal crisis? External, we're kind of identifying what that is. We're identifying what we can control or control. Is it the same? Do you have them take the same approach when it's internal crisis, or what do you typically have anything different between the two?
It might be somewhat the same. I just did a webinar last week with a few of our coaches that I picked them. I was the host, and I picked them because they were leaders through really tough crisis situations. And one of our coaches, she used to be the head of HR for a particular company, a public company, and the CEO died on a particular day. Wow. After a budget meeting of all things. So not much to say about budget.
Yeah, right.
And she was the head of HR and reported to him. And she talked about what that was like and having to lead through that. And it was probably some of the same things we're all talking about, where, be honest, be open, communicate. If you don't know, just say you don't know. But allow people space and room to talk too, and yourself for that matter.
It's funny that was so beautiful that you said that too, because grief. How do you process the grief in the time that you got to get operationally?
Yes, exactly. I mean, the leaders on this webinar I hosted, they actually all said, when it's happening, you're just in do it mode. And you get sort of almost a bit of a superhuman power just to make it happen and do the things you got to do. But then afterwards, you can have a bit of a sort of a letdown or a breakdown a little bit. And they talked about needing more time or space within the moment to just be themselves, to feel and accept that this is difficult and this is happening right now.
Yeah, that one hits really close to home for me, because my father, who when I came back to a family business, he was still the president. He was still my confidant as I was a CEO, but he passed away suddenly. We had about 20 some days. And instantly, I had to assure everyone that this company wasn't going to be sold. I think I had 4 offers for the business within the first month. People looking for, a sale, a fire sale, dealing with all that stuff. And I don't think I grieved for probably 2.5 years. Like I just, but it's amazing how I learned how to handle that one by really not handling that one.
Yes. Right.
So yeah, very interesting.
It's not uncommon. And to some extent, these leaders were telling me, on one level, they were glad they had important responsibility during the crisis, because it gave them something they could do. They had power. They had some power in this situation, and they could do something about it. But they also have to remember there's people under them that might not have any power in this situation. Yeah. And really just need to be reassured that to the best everything's going to be okay.
Well, let me ask you something. That's a great one. When in crisis, crisis is really kind of defined, right? Is that upending of the apple cart, that loss of control, loss of power, loss of all that stuff. When we go through the process of crisis, and that loss of control, what have you found as far as coaching people to coach others, like within their organization, executively lead to to regain that control, or what is that process that you've seen be effective?
Well, there is the loss of control, yet there are certain things that are still under one's control at all times. And so that can often be an area to focus on. What is it that we do have control over at the moment that we are able to work with? I mean, even the most extreme is you do have control within yourself of how you're handling this, right?
Yes.
More or less. And I was just thinking about this the other day because I'm watching the news, and the news is depressing me and getting me down. And I have been going through phases where I'm purposely not watching the news for a few days. And I figure if something's really important, someone will tell me about it, just because the news never makes you happier at this moment. So, and I was doing some meditation at my house, and we live in a nice part of the Silicon Valley, and it's nice and quiet, and it's sunny, and there's birds, and we have a puppy, and meditating, and I'm not watching the news, and I'm like, this is very serene and very peaceful right in the middle of a crisis. But and there was protesters, there's a part of San Jose not far from here where that was going down. But, none of that's happening here. So there's no reason to sit and overwork myself about all that's going on in the world. Right here in this moment, this is a very peaceful, serene moment that I do have supposedly control over. And I'm going to enjoy that. And so, it was sort of a bit of a refocusing to remember we do have certain amounts of control. And in the business sense, there are things we do have control over. I think sometimes if people have not much to do and they're fearful, it's going to make them even more fearful. And there's something to be said sometimes about making sure people stay busy and giving them something to do. May not be the next world-changing thing for your company, but it might be something internal that people could work on that gives them a sense of purpose and something they can control. Maybe we're updating this and that's needed to be fixed for a long time. Maybe we've got to update our databases, and we could put 10 people on that, and we've been wanting to do this for years and never got to it. Or there's so many different projects within a company that maybe this could be a good time to direct people to. That's within their control. And it keeps them busy and feeling like they're accomplishing something despite what's happening outside.
And and it's funny you say that. I think even in the simplicity of the task doesn't necessarily mean the level of the task, right? It doesn't have to be top of the company or bottom doesn't matter. I think, one of the things I actually coach with my clients is a phrase I call swinging the hammer. When you're wondering what to do, just start swinging the hammer, because it's tough to worry at the same time you're working on a project. Like when you're focused on swinging that hammer, it's tough to worry about what's going on in the world. And I think you're so right about that. It reminds me, I just actually brought up here Viktor Frankl, and in his book, Man's Search for Meaning, he wrote the quote that says, everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of human freedoms. To choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way, and that I think was done like when he was in the concentration camps. And I mean, like, to be able to choose in that environment lets us know that in the same environment we can control that. And it's very interesting how that internal loci of control versus external in identifying what is what, and then controlling what you can. Yeah,
absolutely.
That's a great point. Yeah,
absolutely.
So when we look at coming through crisis, one of the things I think sometimes we get into this survival mode of just bearing all the heavy weight, to support everyone and cover everyone, versus kind of leading them actually through to the light. What is something on the other side of crisis that you think that leaders should really focus on drawing their people to? Like, what is there something that, whether it be ideas or offerings or, what shows up for you there?
Well, and we don't yet know what this crisis will look like in the end.
Right.
The biggest picture, we assume in a certain amount of time, there will be a vaccine. This will eventually improve. We don't quite know how the economy is going to respond, of course. So we're not totally sure what this will all look like. I saw a great term the other day, accelerating through the curve. But I don't know where the curve is, right? I mean, we're in a curve, but I don't know when the curve's going to end. Yeah. So
I've seen people accelerate through curves and go right off the side too, right?
Yes. So got to kind of worry about that, of course. But at the same time, there are great opportunities too. Always through crisis do we come up with some great inventions and some great new products. And so my own company is a small example. We do coaching and we sell these large coaching packages. And we said, hey, let's see how fast we could develop a new coaching product that is inexpensive, but very valuable, specifically aimed at crisis. And in only about 2 weeks, I think our team put together something which is fast for, even though we're a small company, we've gotten bigger. So we're a little more bureaucratic than we used to be.
Yep.
Excuse me. For us, we were proud of it. It was really fast. It's at a crazy different price point than anything we've done, meaning low and affordable. And that's something new that we would have never done before. And we have a different way that you can engage with a coach, and you can sign up and pay and start and whatnot, which for us, we've never had anything like that.
I saw that, and that was an amazing thing. It's a basically a per diem, like, live, very acute care type of coaching, right?
That's a good way to put it. Exactly.
Wonderful idea. Yeah, I thought it was great, and yeah.
And you'll see, well, that's a little innovation, but you're going to see tons, and we already are, amazing innovations in the world because of this. There's already business practices that are being changed and improved, and touchless this and that. And I mean, you already can tell the industries that are going to do well. I was reading about how places like Blaze Pizza, of course you can order pizza, go get it. But now that they'll sell you the pizza ingredients and a video to show you how to make it the way they do. Right? So you can make some of your favorite ingredients or favorite dishes at some of these restaurants, or some of them like Subway are doing groceries. Although I heard that hasn't been going quite so well for them, but I think Panera Bread is too. So they're pivoting, and they're thinking of thinking creatively about different ways they can offer their services to the marketplace. And I bet we'll see I already have seen some pretty amazing inventions out there. That I have a face mask with my college alma mater on it now. So,
right? That's a market we never thought would have exploded. Right?
I would have never had that if this hadn't happened. So now I have that to wear.
Yeah. And you know what? It's amazing how, like, I remember early on reading something about them talking about how in massive changes, whether it be 2008, economics, that trends accelerate. And so, if you're watching for trends and stuff like that, things that were starting to happen now, it collapses that time a great deal. And all of a sudden it comes out the other side. And it's very interesting how, you look at like online ordering for restaurants, which some did it. And, you look at like the Applebee's chains of the world had the car side to go for a while, and you phone it in, and all of a sudden now, I mean, it just, whoa, and it just, everybody has it. And it's interesting how it's raising the level of the structure and efficiency that they're having to operate in. The kind of back of the house where they're throwing stuff around. It's like, no, it's got to be here and now and timely, and it's very interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, this is great opportunity to look at all aspects of your business and what could be changed and what could you pivot. And there's problems in your business that you haven't dealt with until now. That you could deal with. There's something that hasn't been working right, or unfortunately an employee that hasn't been the greatest. These are good times to just really change things up. It's forcing you to think very creatively, and your business might look very different on the other side, but it could be a very great different, in a very, like I said, a source of some new amazing innovations that would have never come out otherwise.
And I think that's, as you look through that change, it's just, it's amazing. And there is that old adage of saying, crisis, just like anything, is pressure. And, whether, will you crumble or become a diamond, or, all that fun stuff that comes out of it, or, we'll just be dust, I guess. But it is amazing looking at how, we can set the example to help those that we lead. And I think it's, as we look at whether you're an executive or whatever your position is, it's not about the rank. It's about the way in which you humanize the leadership and are able to really kind of to guide people and kind of care from them as you're going through these challenging times, huh?
Hmm. Yeah, and
Yeah.
especially because you're trying to think creatively, maybe, in some of what you're doing, and you need your people to do the same. But the research has shown when we're under threat mode, fight
Yes.
or flight mode, the parts of our brain that help us to think creatively all shut down. And that's why if you're, ever performed on stage or something, sometimes you can't improvise well, and perhaps
Right.
depending on what it is you're doing on stage. So you want to try and create more of that safety for your folks,
Yep.
and allow them to do their thing and not worry, just not be worried so much about what's happening outside in the world.
Yep. Isn't, and it is creating, that's a good point, for leaders is how do they create, we want to use the phrase safe space, but a space that the employee can be at work and be away from the rest of the world.
Yeah.
We even found that too, where we used to, I remember the first we said in our business, keep your personal things at home and keep your business things here. And then we said, the person's coming to work, they're going to bring their personal things. So when we shifted to leave the drama at home, but bring in your personal things so we can help you work on them here so that they can kind of have a safe space to process through and deal with. And like you said, be creative and really kind of find their inner, value there. Yeah.
Well, in one shift I'm curious about, we'll have to revisit this, is I think there's this interesting blending now more of your work life and your home, your personal life, because we're all at home, right? And people can see our houses now, and they see,
Yep.
your dog walk by, or your kid, your spouse, whatever, your personal effects. I mean, even our newscasters are at home here in the Bay
Yep.
Area. So, I'm like judging their homes, and, oh, wow, that must not be a very successful newscaster, because they
Yep.
but we're all, that's happening to us all, and I suspect on the other side of this, we'll come out of it even more, maybe, I don't know, personal or something. There'd be,
Yeah.
we'll know more about each other, and have more of ourselves in the workplace, because there's more of a blending between the work and the home life.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and like you said, with the blending part, when the COVID thing started and everybody started kind of work from home status, a funny meme or a post I saw come out that says, now we're going to find out which one of those meetings could have just been an email, and it was like, oh yeah, that's really going to show up. And, the challenge as we go forward, what does commercial real estate look like, right? What does our work environment, what does leadership mean through Zoom? Like you said, it's not the same as having a true water cooler, but we were able to create connection. And, for myself, I've been coaching like this for about 5 years. And you said yours has been virtual most all the time. So once you're used to creating relationships like this, I don't necessarily notice the screen very much. I just, and it's interesting. What will that change in the way in which we lead? Will we give our pep talks through a video drop? Will it be, will we tweet out the employee of the month? It might be very interesting to see that. Where do you think that, just by, the trends you're seeing? I saw Facebook had mentioned that, they said 50% of our employees will be virtual in the next 10 years. Well, in 10 years, that's a long way to look at. But even in the next year to two, what do you think is going to happen with people? Do you think they're going to finally get everybody back because they lost that context? Or do you think they're going to kind of expand that? Or what do you think is going to happen?
Yeah, I think we've gotten pretty good at figuring out that we can do this virtual thing. I mean, people like you and I have done it most of our career, but there's plenty of companies that hadn't done a lot of it. And they figured out that they can do it pretty well, and the people enjoy not having to commute and all that, get the kids to school first and all that goes into it. I think you'll just sort of see more of a permanent work from home ethos in many companies. But having said that, the research has shown that when you're trying to get stuff done, working from home is more efficient than being in a busy office. However, when it comes to creativity and new ideas and innovation, people in person actually tend to do a better job at that. So I certainly don't think you're going to eliminate. You're still going to want to have avenues for people to be physically together.
Yeah.
And so it may just be that we're in a little less often, maybe everyone's in on certain days of the week and take other days off at home or something like that.
Isn't that the truth? Well, and you said that well too. I think there's that collaboration, that instant feedback, that if you have a Zoom room of 25 people, sorry, no, you go for, no, I go, yeah. you go,
I was just going to say,
it's funny. And so that makes so much sense. And, almost this WeWork or that type of kind of environment where everybody can have a place to come, sit down, share, but then be able to work at home. In my previous business, we found that we were kind of 24/5. We worked 24 hours a day, but 5 days a week. And so after Friday afternoons, there really was not much for customer service or any of that stuff going. It was just the delivery part that was delivering to the customers. And so what we found was that we really don't need our office personnel there. So we said, hey, if you want to come in early throughout the week and have Friday afternoons off, and they absolutely loved it. And the quality with which they valued the work environment was amazing, but we didn't need them, and we were able to give them that flexibility. And I think that's where this is going to become a major tool. If somebody is able to have 3 days a week in the office and 2 days they're able to be at home and not have to do the congestion of traffic and stuff like that. I think you're right. I think there's a cool kind of blend that's going to come from this. Yeah.
We at Coach Source, we've been all virtual anyway. So there is a tiny office in San Jose that I go to, but I just go because I'm an extrovert and I kind of want to be around some people. The other people in the office don't work for us. I'm a sublease. I have a sublease kind of situation. But the last 2 employees we hired both left their prior employers because we offered a way to work from home, and they both got rid of an hour commute each way. And I don't know if we were paying better. We probably weren't, honestly. We're a smaller company than where they came from, and we don't have as many benefits. But for them, the idea of working from home and not having to drive the hour commute each way, they loved it. And so we use that as a competitive advantage when we hire. We don't, since we're all virtual, you can live wherever you want in the country, generally in the U.S.
Yeah.
And
you know what? That's a great point. And we're getting close on time here, but this has been so amazing. But one of the things I do want to ask too, leadership through talent acquisition, leadership through crisis in the terms of talent acquisition. What are some opportunities that are here in crisis for us to acquire wonderful people?
Well, it's been hard to get good people, as you probably know, for the last many years. And the economy, the unemployment rate was the lowest in history only a few months ago. So every time I had to hire, I would just put my head down here we go again. We had this one position was open for probably a year. It was so hard to find the right person. Everyone had a job, and, we couldn't find, you're going to have to know that you'd be kind of poaching them from somewhere else if you were going to hire someone. And now unfortunately, people perhaps are losing their jobs. We can see it in the unemployment rate. Maybe it's temporary. We'll see. It does mean there's more opportunity for talent, though. It does mean that there could be some fabulous people who are furloughed or completely unemployed that you might be able to scoop up, and if your business is doing well. So last many years, it's been, the candidates have had the upper edge on the employers, I think. Maybe that'll shift a little bit, and we will have a bit more of the upper edge, and hopefully we'll have more candidates to choose from and a little more leeway on some of their demands.
Yeah, right. That's an interesting part. And not only too, I was talking to somebody who said, if the way in which we engage our employees, I think we'll have a grassroots or a gossip effect that, if people hear, hey, this guy, they treated them really, really well, and they were really kind to him, and they were understanding, or they were, this and this and this, or they tried, or they were really, as you mentioned even earlier, just they were honest with them. They were, versus what their experience might be at their companies. It might be a different place to put a little feather in your hat, huh?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And that's especially when you're a smaller business, and sometimes you're trying to hire someone who might have been at a bigger company who had more benefits and whatnot. You've got to show what are the benefits from being in a smaller business For us, it's work from home, and since we're smaller, so for some of the people I was hiring, they're going to work directly for me as the
Yep.
CEO versus being 6 layers away. Various things like that we're able to use to our advantage.
That is awesome. So, Brian, thank you so much for all the amazing insight that you have. And if people want to find out more about yourself and Coach Source, how do they do that?
Well, our company is at coachsource.com, just spelled like you'd expect. I'm on LinkedIn as Brian Underhill. There may be a few Brian Underhills, but I'm the one with Coach Source. And I'm on Twitter at @BUnderhill as well. So those are probably the best places to find me. And I'd love to stay in touch with anybody who may be listening.
That's awesome. Well, you brought a ton of insight, a ton of just great conversation. And I think, this is what the Greatness Garage was built for, is for us to help each other and to help people learn, executives, if you're looking for a little support and stuff like that, it's a great place to get some experience. And those who are getting into coaching, those who are looking, reach out. They got 1,100. I'm sure they're always looking for great talent to be able to share out there and to be able to help. And if you're looking to serve people in a way that leads them through their humanity and understanding, Brian's a guy to reach out to. And Coach Source, it sounds like a great organization. So thank you again, Brian. You all have yourselves an amazing one. And if you guys need anything from me, go to callwithbrad.com and I'll serve you in any way I possibly can. So thank you so much, and be safe, be well, and have a most amazing day. I hope you enjoyed the interview today and found value that you can implement in your business immediately. Remember, action is what makes this information all worth it. If you need help figuring out what that action is, go to callwithbrad.com and we'll get some clarity and help you figure out what that should be.